get started now, and if some latecomers arrive, we will catch them up if we can. Okay, so and like I said, welcome to today's Employability Esol session. I think a lot of you have come through quite a few of these before, so you know the format now, and that this is provided by the Accelerate Employment Project and the Watch Centre. So we'll get started. Okay, so today we're looking at adverbs, and our learning objectives today are to understand what an adverb is, to identify the adverbs in a sentence, and to know the different types of adverbs. So if you're already quite familiar with adverbs, you can use this as revision. If not, then we'll do a quick overview of exactly what an adverb is, how to find one in a sentence, and to understand their meaning. Okay, so what is an adverb? An adverb describes the verb in a sentence, and many adverbs are adjectives with -y added on the end. And an adverb tells us how often, when, and where. So these are the main things to remember with an adverb, that it describes the verb in a Okay, so if we look at this quick example of how to see how an adverb works in a sentence. So if you remember our weeks when we've looked at nouns and adjectives, you'll remember that an adjective describes the noun. So the noun is a person, place or thing, and then the adjective describes that person, place or thing. So with this sentence here, we have he is a quick worker. So our noun is worker because that's a person, and quick would be our adjective because it's describing the person. Now, the same works for a verb and an adverb. So the adverb describes the verb. So he is working quickly. Working would be our verb, and quickly describes how the verb is acting. So our verb is working, and our adverb, which describes the verb, is quickly. So you'll see how an adjective describes a noun and a verb is described by an adverb. So that's a really easy way to differentiate and tell the difference between an adjective and an adverb, is to remember that they both describe the noun and the verb. Okay, so how to identify an adverb, how to spot one in a sentence. Many adverbs have this -y added onto the end of an adjective. So not only does this tell us how you can turn an adjective into an adverb, but also how to spot one. So if you see here, we've got confident, which is our adjective. And then if we were to add the -y, so this -y here onto the end, we get confidently. So here we have our adjective and here we have our adverb. And the adjective would tell us about the person. So we might say, he is very confident. But you would say for a verb, he is working very confidently. So that's the difference between an adjective and an adverb. And this -y at the end, you'll know instantly that you are looking at an adverb and that it is describing what the verb is doing because you've got this -y on the end of the adjective. Okay, so how to spot an adverb in the sentence. So if you've been to view these sessions before, you know that we always like to first look at a sentence. We decide what are our nouns. So the nurse has to work very carefully. What could our nouns be? Now, if we remember that a noun is a person, a place, or a thing usually, we can tell that the nurse is one of our nouns and that has to work very carefully. So we would stick with that just being our only noun in a sentence. Now, when we're looking at verbs, we always like to circle them, and our verb is our action word. So what is the nurse doing? Well, the sentence tells us that she has to work very carefully. So work would be our verb because that is what she is doing in the sentence. So now when we come to our adjective, we look, are there any adjectives describing this noun? So the nurse has to work very carefully. There are no nouns that tell us more about the nurse. So we don't know what she looks like. We don't know if she's a man or a woman. We don't know anything descriptive about her. So there's no adjectives in this sentence. So next we come to look at adverbs. So now if we remember that adverbs describe the verb, what word could describe the verb in this sentence? So the nurse has to work very carefully. So this carefully tells us how she is working. So with her having worked very carefully, we know that carefully is describing this verb, and this special ly on the end also tells us that it is the adverb. I just thought I'd quickly mention, I forgot to say at the start, that these sessions are recorded for training purposes and advertisement purposes. So if you would prefer to have your audio and your video switched off, that is completely okay. I just thought I'd let you know before I started. But going back to this sentence, so we have the nurse has to work very carefully. Nurse is our noun, work is our verb, and the adverb, which describes our verb, is carefully. And we've got the special ly on the end, which also hints that and tells us that it is the adverb. Okay, so for our next sentence, she successfully completed the qualification. So we're looking for our noun, who or what is the sentence about, and it's about she. So this is our noun. So we know the lady in the sentence is what our noun is about. So she successfully completed the qualification. Okay, so next we look for our verb and the action she's doing. So successfully completed the qualification. So completed, her finishing whatever qualification or course she was doing, this would be our verb. Okay, so now we know who the sentence is about and what she is doing. So, qualification is another noun. That's a thing. So we have she completed the qualification. So now we look for our adjectives. There were no adjectives which describe the noun, so we don't know anything more about the lady, and we don't know anything more about the qualification, which are nouns. So we know there are no adjectives in this sentence, as an adjective always describes the noun. So now we're going to look for the adverb in the sentence. Now the adverb, like we spoke about earlier, describes the verb. So we know our verb is completed, so we need to work out what word describes the verb. So we've got she successfully completed the qualification, and that leaves us with successfully and the ly ending. So we know that successfully tells us is the adverb as it describes the verb. We know that she successfully completed the qualification. So I hope you see how it can be quite simple to identify adverbs and just break the sentence down into these manageable parts. Okay, and another great thing about adverbs is they tell us how often things happen. So they might not always end in this ly, the adverb ending. Some adverbs can tell you how often something happens and when something happens. So they can tell you more, not just about how you are doing something, how the verb is acting, but also when and where and how. So we'll look a little bit further to explain this. Okay, so we turn our attention to when adverbs. So an adverb can tell you when something takes place. So it can tell you if it took place in the past tense, the present tense, or the future tense. So, and by tenses we mean we know what time this action is taking place. So if it's in the past tense, it will be last week, or it could be yesterday, or last week, or last year, or last hour. Present tense would be now, so you would say I am now in an Esol class, and future tense would be next week I am going to go to the Esol class on Tuesday, so it would be in the future. We'll come to present tense and future tense in a moment, and we'll look at them in more depth in later sessions. But right now, when we are looking at when adverbs, so we're looking at when the action is taking place, the adverb can tell us how. So if we look at examples for past tense, we've got yesterday and before. These are both adverbs, as they are telling us when an action is taking place. So if we were to read this sentence, I went to college yesterday. Yesterday is our adverb, but it doesn't have the ly ending, but because it's telling us when, we know that this is our adverb, which tells you when you went. So we've got our verb, went, And the fact that we know they went to college yesterday, this adverb is telling us more about this verb, about when the person went. So that's how we can identify that this is an adverb. And the same goes for the adverb before. So she read her job application again before the interview. We know that in this sentence, if we break it down, so if we look for our nouns are, I'll just change my pen colour. We have she is a noun because it's the person the sentence is about. She read her job application. Now, job application, it's a thing. So remember, noun is a person, a place, or thing. Again, before the interview. So interview, and that's could be a place or a thing as well. So those are our nouns. And then if we look for our verb on so what she is doing, we can see that she read her job application. Read would be our main verb in this sentence because it is telling us what she is doing. So now we need to look at how and when. So we're looking at when she read, and we'll look to the adverb to tell us when she went. So she read again before the interview. So before is the key phrase, key adverb here that tells us when this action was taking place. So that we know this verb took place before the interview, and that tells us when, and it tells us more about the verb. So before would be our adverb. Okay, and here's another example of the when adverb in action, and this time we'll look at present tense. So present tense, something happening right now. So you'd say, right now, I am watching an Esol session. Okay, but so if we look at the adverbs today and now, we can see how these are when adverbs are used in a sentence. So today I am attending an Esol class. So I've already told you, today is our adverb. So let's break down the sentence. So today I am attending an Esol class. So what are our nouns? Our nouns are I, because that's the person the sentence is about. Today I am attending an Esol class, and that's a thing, a place. So these are our nouns. So next we look for our verb, attending, because that is what the person, what the I person is doing. So attending would be our verb. And this is where our adverb comes into play, as the adverb today tells us when the person is attending the class. So today is our adverb and attending is our verb. So today is telling us more about the verb. Okay, so now if we look at this adverb now and this sentence, we've got I am developing my communications skills now. So we've got our nouns, I, and communication skills are also the nouns. And we've got our verb, which is developing. So developing means to improve, to get better. So I am developing my communication skills now. And that leaves us with now, which is our adverb. It's the adverb is telling us when the action is taking place. It tells us that we are developing our skills right now. Okay, so I think you're probably getting the gist of how we can spot adverbs in sentences, and we'll just do one last example of when adverbs, which is the future tense. So tomorrow and soon are also future tense adverbs. Now the future tense tells us what will take place in the future. So it could be tomorrow, it could be next week, it could be next year, in an hour, like it is all about what will happen. So tomorrow is our first adverb. So we've got the closing date for the vacancy is tomorrow. So like with all the others, we're going to look for our nouns. We've got closing date on the job advert. We've got vacancy is a thing, so that's another noun. And then we've got closing would be our verb, and then adverb would be tomorrow, because that is telling us when the action is taking place, so that the deadline for the job, when it is closing, it is tomorrow. And then same, we've got soon here. So I have applied for a volunteer placement and I will hear back from the organisation soon. So this is quite a long sentence, so we've got to break it down. So I, that's the person, so that's our noun, have applied for a volunteer. Volunteer placement is a thing, so that's a noun. And we'll hear back from the organisation, that's a place or a thing, soon. So now we look for our future tense, our future verb, and we can see that will hear back from the organisation soon, that this will hear is our future tense because the will is telling us that it will happen in the future. So that they will hear back from the volunteer placement soon. And if this is our verb and our action, and our future tense, we know that soon is our adverb, as this is telling us when we will hear back, when we will hear, when the action will take place. So so we've looked quickly at how to find when adverbs in the past tense, in the present tense, and in the future tense. So you can see that when these adverbs have all taken place. Now you also get different types of adverbs. You get how often adverbs. Now these how often adverbs tell us how often you will do something or how often the action, the verb in the sentence takes place. So it could be never, it could be sometimes, or it could be always. These how often verbs tell you when things take place. So, and you can slot them into different sentences. So here we've got she is early for appointments. So you could write she is never early for appointments. You could write she's sometimes early for appointments, or you could write she is always early for appointments. So it's always good to be very consistent and reliable. This always, sometimes means you sometimes are early, and never means you're always late. So these adverbs are all interchangeable, and depending on what your sentence meaning, you would use the right one to explain the action, being early. Okay, so now this also tells us where adverbs can tell us where the action takes place. So they can tell us maybe if it's inside somewhere or outside. So if we look here, we've got a nurse working in a hospital. She works inside the hospital. We know that she is our noun and hospital is our place. We know that works is our verb, as that is what she is doing. And to find out where she is working, the adverb inside tells us that where she is. She works inside the hospital, not behind it, not in front of it. She works inside the hospital. And then the same goes for this sentence. When we look at the adverb outside, we look, he works outside in the garden. So he is our noun, works outside in the garden. Garden is our another noun because it's a place. We have works as our verb because that tells us what he is doing. And outside is where. So this where he is working is our adverb, as it tells us more about where this action is taking place. Okay, now adverbs can be used in different ways. If we look at on the topic of employability and applying to jobs and developing and improving our skills, we can look at what adverbs are in the category of key skills and qualities. So if we look at this scenario of working in a fast-paced environment under pressure, you might see this a lot in CVs or job applications. It's a really good key skill to be able to say that you are good at working in fast-paced environments under pressure. So if we look here, we've got a chef or a builder. You might be working under particular time constraints. So you would be working in this sort of environment. The same could go if you're working in retail or customer service. You have to be doing something very quickly and you may not have a lot of time to do it. So key words and skills that are related to this key skill and quality of working in a fast-paced environment, you would write the adjectives quick, efficient and calm. So quick, So where you work and can work quickly, you can show that you can efficiently, so you know how to manage your time well and prioritize different tasks. And calmly is a really key thing to be able to working under pressure. You don't get flustered or worried, you just get the job done. So these are some 3 really key skills and qualities which you can see in their adjective form and their verb form. So here we have them in the adjective form, and here we have them in the adverb form. Okay, so, and you can also see how they've been turned from the adjective into the adverb. So here we have the root word quick, and to turn it into the adverb, you add the ly. So quickly, efficiently, and calmly. These adverbs tell us how the action has been taken place. So quickly, efficiently, and calmly. Okay, so now we'll look at another quick example of another way to use adverbs in when talking about our key skills and qualities. And we think about working in customer service. So you might be a waiter or waitress, or you might be working in a call center or talking to people a lot for your job. And these are a few other key skills and qualities that are great to use in job applications when describing how you have done certain tasks, or when you've worked in an area that relies on customer service. So if we look at our root word, cheerful, we know this is our adjective, and when we turn it into an adverb, we add this ly on the end to say cheerfully. So the ly is added onto cheerful. So cheerful becomes cheerfully. And the same goes for polite, and polite becomes politely. So you're very polite to customers, or you respond to the customer very politely. And confident, the ability to speak clearly and without worrying, to be able to present yourself well. This is another way the adjective turns into the adverb, confidently. So we've got our adjectives here, and we've got our adverbs here. Okay, so you can just see quickly how this adjective turns into the adverb. And we've not got a lot of time left, so we'll just quickly review the lesson. So today we looked at what an adverb is. So we found out that an adverb describes the verb in a sentence. So what is an adverb? Yep, so the adverb we've learned describes the verb in a sentence, and that many adverbs are adjectives with the ly added on the end. And the adverbs can tell us how often, when, and where a verb takes place. So if we remember that key thing, then that is all you really need to remember when thinking about adverbs. We've looked at how to identify an adverb, so you look for the ly at the end, or you look for if it is telling us, the word is telling us more about how, when, where, or how often an action is taking place. And so, yeah, we looked at the different types of adverbs, and we've also looked at adverbs in the context of key skills and qualities. So when we look at things like customer service and these key skills and qualities, cheerfully, politely, confidently, and the same goes for when we look at working in a fast-paced environment under pressure. You need to work quickly, efficiently, and calmly, and these are all adverbs to describe working in those scenarios. Okay, so now we've finished this lesson, you'll be able to tick off your lesson checklist and say that you've attended adverbs, and you've also been sent the adverb worksheets in the email to work through. And if you would like, if you're on the Accelerate project, you should be having an Esol booklet arriving very shortly. So that should be with you very soon if you are on our Accelerate project. So thank you for attending, guys. I'm afraid we don't have time to work through the worksheets today as we're running out of time on our Zoom call. But thank you for joining, and join us next lesson on Tuesday at 11 AM, where we'll be looking and finding out more about conjunctions.